So we had some rule changes this year. Oh, he's gonna turn me up. We had a few rules changes, not as many this year. We'll go through all of those. Have quite a few interpretations that came out. Some of them are very helpful. We had some editorial changes which changes our practice, so I'll talk about those for a change, the editorial ones that are a bigger difference for us. But as Chris said, please ask questions as we go. Happy to answer and make sure it's clear before we move on. So points of emphasis, usually start there. New points of emphasis this year. First one being on athlete well-being. So designated area for photographers, that was also last season. So that's kind of a repeat. But we need to do a good job to make sure our photography folks have a place, and in a place that's not going to be disruptive to maybe kids behind the block. So ultimately we want to do that all ahead of the meet, make sure they know where they're welcome to go and take the photos they need to take. And behind the starting blocks is not an area that we're going to be allowing. We had some rules book updates, little expanded role on Rule 322 by adding the approved healthcare providers in case, or professionals in the case that there's a concussion type thing that might have occurred. Makes sense because the approved healthcare providers were one of the ones that could declare, no, this person cannot compete, so they should be capable of telling us they can compete if it's an area that they have expertise in. Okay. We aligned some language in Rule 322, not a big change there for sure. And Rule 361, 481, both of those are talking about expanded to include influence of controlled or illicit substances. So we can't show up drunk, we can't show up on, and if we're impaired because we've had NyQuil, that's even a problem. So if somebody's impaired, we don't want them on deck, we don't want them competing. More points of emphasis. Electronic devices, that's been a less than favorite one for all of us for several years. They've kind of reverted back to where it was before a couple years ago, in that if somebody's using a device during competition, that's where they'll get the unsporting penalty. If they're not using it, so if they forget to take off their watch, which is the norm, it's okay. So the big thing is using. So the Federation also made a point and said we're continuing to look at this all the time, because as you can see, I put a couple of examples but I could have probably found 10 more electronic devices that could be used, and if they were, that would be a problem. So as long as they're not in use during the race, that's fine. It can be recording during the race for use after, that's fine. So, mine captures heartbeat, which is good because it still works. And so they could record my heartbeat while I swim my 500 free and say, oh, well, you went to 240 after your first 50. I think you took it out too fast. But that all occurs after. Yeah. Yeah, we even have a situation to cover that point, so that's great. But yeah, it's really going to be handled like any situation where if you see something, any official sees it, their arm's going to go up, indicating this is a possible disqualification. And then we'll have to investigate and determine, and if what they saw is somebody clicking their watch after every 50 or doing what I do when I swim, ooh, I've got another 500 to go. That's not okay.
If you are a referee on deck and you have somebody get up on the blocks and you notice after the start of the race that they have a watch on, how do you know, or how do you handle the situation in not knowing whether they are using that watch to pace themselves or whatever? How do you handle the situation? And Bill explained that. You disqualify and then you retract that disqualification once you find out, hopefully you retract the disqualification once you find out they are not using the device as an aid.
And this goes for swimming and diving still. Backstroke ledges, so we don't use those. They're not approved. Got a pretty picture of a little backstroke wedge if you haven't seen it, but I'm sure most of you have all seen backstroke wedges. If you watch the Olympics, that's the norm. But we're not using them for this year, but Federation is definitely looking at it, so I wouldn't be surprised in the coming year. They're looking at the safety data to make sure that it's not a problem before they allow us to use those. Changes. This is the shortest section in this presentation. All right. Rule 44414 was changed, and formerly it said that the referee retains clerical authority over the meet through the completion of all the reports and stuff. They changed and took out the clerical part of authority, so indicating that if after I've signed the score sheet, I figure out there was a disqualification and there shouldn't have been, I can make that correction for up to 42 hours. Or 48 hours. That's right. 48 hours. So that's just the change. Doesn't happen often, but for sure we want to make sure we get it right. And we've got a couple days to do it. I did put some points out there in case you're interested. So our authority as referee starts when we arrive, which is usually within at least 30 minutes before the start. If it's me, you know I'm there for warm-up. Yeah.
I'm going to back you up a little bit, Bill.
Yay.
On your 48 hours, coaches are required to turn in their results in 24 hours.
Okay.
So how do we reconcile that?
Well, I would assume the coach then would send in the revised, if there was such a thing. They'd be involved with the correction, I would think. That makes sense? Okay. Thanks, Ron. Sorry. The coaches turn in their results within 24 hours of the meet. And he wanted to know what's going to happen if between 24 and 48 hours there's an error. And my answer was they're going to be involved with this and would have to resubmit a revised results. So referee authority starts when we arrive and officially ends after we sign the score sheet. And then, of course, we have the 48-hour window to make any kind of corrections that are required. Suit violations. So there was a change. I don't think it really affects what we would do, but it says the referee will advise the coach that the swimmer may not compete until the suit is made legal per penalty 332. Number 2. So formally the rule said if we can't find you or we wanted to hurry up the meet, we could go over the PA. We would never do that. in today's world. We would never do that. We will stop the meeting and find you. Time is not as important as you handling this delicate situation correctly. So that's the change. So we'll still, in the event that there's a suit violation, we'll find you. We'll let you know so that it can be corrected before they swim again. Illness and injury. So editorial change here. This is one I mentioned earlier. So the Rule 322 basically says, you're supposed to swim all the events that you're signed up for. Unless there's an illness or injury, then a physician, approved healthcare pro, or referee forces a competitor to withdraw. So that's okay. So the change was in the second part, which basically allows that same healthcare professional, physician, or referee to verify recuperation before they're allowed to swim again. So that's just a little expanded role for our healthcare professionals, which seems to make good sense. Another editorial change was the starting protocol. And the changes basically, and we talked about this a little bit last clinic, we'll be saying take your marks and not take your mark. But now we're better aligned with the other rules, and that's other rule codes, and that's good. So I love it. So let's do that. And by the way, we're not going to be using whistles as preparatory commands. We're going to follow the verbal starting protocol. In all cases. So there's about 10 Federation interpretations. I'd like to go and touch on all of the ones. So first one is we have a swim off and 200 medley relay. Coaches want to substitute the 50 fly for the swim off. So less wear and tear on their bodies. So makes sense, except it's not legal. So they shouldn't be allowed to do that. So this is all in Rule 544, and the swim off stroke distance must be the same as the specific event being contested. So, I mean, if you don't want to swim it, you can still say, I'm not going to swim it, and that'll be fine. But we're not going to substitute something else for it. All right. Situation 2, swimsuit has a printed manufacturer's name and logo. So this is 2 logos. This is not okay, right? But they thought they'd get around it by taking a marker that's the same color as the suit to cover the logo. Okay. Seen that before. The referee should allow for this as long as the modified second logo is not clearly visible. So that's just something to know. I mean, we want to make sure it really isn't readily apparent. I've seen the opposite of this where they'll try to scratch off the logo. One of the logos. So as long as it's a match, we're going to be okay with it. But
okay, so I've got a kid in a lime green tech suit, and all we have is a black marker. Sorry, we can't do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It has to match, and it's got to be basically invisible.
So Monica and I talked a couple weeks ago about this one, and the other part of this is team logo. And we're allowed to have one team logo that's up to 9 square inches. So that's the requirement right now. So we can't have a separate team logo and mark it out. because now we've got too much space that's not permeable. So that's the main goal of the 9 square inches, is the permeability of the suit. So if they're trying to fix multiple team logos, that will not be okay.
Bill, how do we go about 2 styles of swimsuits for the girls? I just had that be a thing that they want to do, 6 body types of suits fit some girls, doesn't fit the others. So I was wondering if so long they're essentially the same duplicate, is it okay, or how would a coach know about that?
I'd be calling Monica right behind you. She's forgot more about suit styles than anybody I know by a lot.
And my only addition to that situation is when coaches are ordering suits, that we really keep in mind the suit the requirement that covers the buttocks and breasts. That's all it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, it makes sense that everyone doesn't get the same suit, you know. But coverage part is what we'll be most interested in. Well, how about the third situation? I didn't get a number on it. Well, yeah, kind of I did. Host team fails to provide legal backstroke flags at dual meet. We're using 6th place scoring. Referee will penalize the host team. Okay? So, first thing we're going to do is not allow backstroke events to be conducted. So, no backstroke flag, safety problem. Sorry, we're not going to do this. Visiting team is awarded points based on what they entered. And the home team doesn't get any points for anything that had a backstroke start. So that's how do you handle it for that situation? Makes sense.
Hold on, one moment. Okay.
The rule requires the pendants to be alternating colors. If one of the pendants falls off, does that nullify the backstroke flag rule?
Well, we're to be legal, we need 3 pendants over each lane in one of the alternating color. If it falls off in the middle of the race or something, or before.
When the referee has arrived at the pool, he's looking at the facility. He happens to see that lane 3 only has 2 pendants. And there's not going to be time to restring another pendant or put one on with paper clips or with clothespins. At that point, we just tell the coaches we aren't doing any backstroke events.
Well, you probably have some options. Now, it's often you can get those legal by just sliding them around. In order to do that, we do that routinely at VMAC anymore. That's the norm. Not quite through with this. If you can't make it legal, your options are these backstroke flags aren't legal and we can't run the event. But most likely you could say, well, we can't use lane 6 or whatever it is, and now you've got a 5-lane situation. But anyway, we shouldn't be running unless we have legal backstroke flags over each lane.
How exactly does the referee penalize the host team?
The penalty is they don't get to swim. Nobody gets to swim. And the host team gets no points. The visiting team gets the points based on their entries. So if they had 3 entries, they get points for all 3 swimmers.
Yes. And Bill, one more question. There was a question up here about what if the flags are all the same color? They're not alternating. There are some schools out there that have that.
That's not a legal description there. Yeah, we can look at Rule 275, and that will help. More information. All right, starter doesn't clearly enunciate the word marks as part of their starting command. The field went down anyway and had a fair start. Referee should not call a false start because the clear enunciation is not a reason to declare a false start. The false start is called because the field didn't go down. So we'll do the best we can and enunciate, but most of us are not public speakers either. So, and might take us a meet or two to quit saying mark, but we'll get it. All right. Situation 5, photographer requests to take photos from behind the starting blocks. You already know that's not okay. So this is point of emphasis again, and really the pool administration is encouraged to be proactive, and so if we can figure out before the meet where we're going to have our photographers, that would be great. For sure, by the time before the meet starts, that has to be figured out. Okay. All right, number 6. Host of a major invite requests that the backstroke ledges be used. No, sorry, not this year. No, that's the wedge for the forward start. Those are perfectly legal. It's the ones that drape down into the water and they put their feet on top of those. Those are the bad boys. Great question.
Hey Bill, back to the photographic. Hey Bill, back to the photograph question number 5 here. What if a photographer asks to be behind the diapers?
No, sir. Yeah, they don't need our help back there. No. Great question, Al. Thank you. Seven, CHSSA requests that the referee be responsible to acquire all technical information on the proposal to use electronic relay takeoff equipment. I don't know if anybody has this at this point. BMAC has it. That would be appropriate, and we could do that if we'd like to look at it. But that's okay. Currently, we don't use them in Colorado for making decisions. So, if EMAC has it and they want to record it for posterity, I'm good. I remember we tried it. I was with Monica. We were dual confirming starts 6-8 years ago. Long time ago. Yeah, we were awesome. Well, she was for sure. Okay, during the 500 free, the referee noticed the swimmer wearing a smartwatch. Okay, we're going to DQ the swimmer if they are using it, and that will be the final disqualification. We talked about what would be a normal protocol. You'll see an arm go up, and that's good. That's really for you as coaches too, because hey, there's a problem here, and we would like your input onto the whole thing, for sure.
Clear that. How? See a watch, you raise your hand, we get disqualification. How do you clear it? How do you clear that DQ?
You can just simply go to the table and say, no, lane 4 was fine. Just let them know which heat.
How do you know it was not
unless you know that it is, you're going to clear it.
So, Bill, question for me. We walk over, we physically look at the watch and make sure it's not timed. Would that be the correct procedure?
You know, it depends, because that would be certainly something I'd want to do. The other thing I might like to do is talk to the officials and see, did you see them referring to their watch during this race? I might talk to the coach and say, have you, are you aware of the smartwatch and how's it being used? And I would trust in the coaches if they said, no, this is not something he's using or she's using, and we'll be good.
Bill, sorry. As best practice, honestly, as a lead referee, when we're doing our pre-meetings, can I say, wow, it's okay to wear an electronic watch? I would just advise best practice. Don't wear a watch at all. It just makes it easier and cleaner. I mean, because I find it difficult to really make a DQ. What am I looking at?
Yeah, right. I don't think there's a problem with saying, you know, it's not going to break my heart if you guys don't have electronic devices on today. But, you know, you can't make them take them off.
No, I say as
No.
best practice.
Yep, I like it.
Bill, as a procedure, if we see something on their wrist and they're swimming, then we do this automatically and then clear it always at the end of every race.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it, we're raising our hands.
Right.
And then figuring it out at the end. So it's kind of a two-step process.
I don't know another way to do it, so I'm with you.
Okay. Then back to the previous question, tell them not to do it if they can help it.
Well, I can get it.
Don't be sorry, I love questions.
So just to clarify, you said that the watch, so I have an iWatch, but it doesn't communicate with me while I'm swimming. That's the issue we're looking at here, right? Is whether it's communicating with me while I'm competing.
Yeah.
Not whether it records my swim.
There's an app for that.
Exactly, but I'm saying while I'm swimming, my watch isn't talking or mentally communicating with me.
Right.
This watch should be okay for a swimmer, even though we discourage it.
If they're not using it for pacing or any other use during competition, it's perfectly fine.
So unless I were to have something in my ear or a goggle that does communicate that information to me,
Yeah,
that watch should be okay.
smart goggles are going to be a no-no, hands down. So that one is, there's no other reason to have them on. So that one's a problem.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify with my smartwatch, I use it when I swim all the time, and it does have a timer. So I can, when I'm swimming or when I'm coming over, I can see my watch and it has an actual timer. So I can see how much time I've actually used. So that's what we're worried about.
One moment. Okay, so a smartwatch that is being worn, you are using the timing system on it. It's really no different than looking at that pace clock right over there. What we are concerned about is a smartwatch that might be pacing you with a pulse. Okay? There are smartwatches that will give you a beat, like a metronome. Okay? But that being said, if that swimmer or competitor is using, and that stopwatch is on, when you go over to them, that's a disqualification. They are using it. Okay, now, one other thing, there is wearable technology now that is not on the wrist. It can be put on the body, it's more like a heart monitor. Those are giving signals to the coach, okay? Those are not transmitting to the swimmer, they're transmitting to the coach. Those are completely fine.
Yeah.
One more?
Of course, I have a two-parter. Well, one, just to be proactive in your meeting before the meet. Just as we asked, does anybody have tape on the letter? That might be a time to at least clear the positive way. Does anybody have any devices that's gathering data and go as far as you want with that? Can you give me the needs and leads? Can I be ready? Then you're ready for the decision that you have to make, as opposed to just reacting. And so that's more of a suggestion. Second, a lot of, it's such a gray area with how everything is gathered now. If you go to a master's meet, the new starting position in masters is this. Is starting my watch at the start of the meet using a device?
If I saw that, that would be a DQ in my world. Absolutely.
So with so much technology, every watch can do almost everything. I'm the referee, I see a swimmer wearing a watch, I disqualify them. Who is responsible for bringing the proof that they are not using their watch illegally, that they are using their watch as they're allowed to, that they're not getting signals? Who is supposed to bring the burden of proof to the referee? If I just disqualify them, I'm just going to disqualify them.
I'm gonna hang that on the referee to do the investigation, talk to the swimmer, talk to the coach, talk to the officials that observe the race and make a decision.
I just had a question about the pace clocks, because I always thought that we turned them off. You mentioned that they did not. No, I know, but just as a matter of reference. Because it's all, I know coming at Netflix that sit there and watch it and pace themselves in a lot of events. But I think like the goal is to minimize correct. And as an official, I think when we walk on the pool, we see that pace clock on and it makes you feel better. I think you ask the folks to turn it on. It's a simple process. One more.
I'll take the opposite aspect as the coach. If my swimmers are messing with their watches, they're probably not swimming the rest of the meet because they should just take them off. There's no reason, the data is great, but for high school swimming, I don't think they're collecting Triton style data out of Philippines. So just tell them to take the damn watches off and be done with it.
They're very popular opinion. We'll get home sooner. Okay, number 9. Following the third round, diver requests a DFS for their fourth round dive. Referee should not allow, because DFS is for withdrawing from an event, not a dive. So if they want to be done, a DFS at that point is going to withdraw them from the rest of that event, not just skip a dive. If they decide, oh, I'm going to try it, and then they get up there and they just jump off because they can't do it, that's going to be a bigger problem for them. So they have to make a sincere attempt to do the dive. Last but not least, consolation final heat of the 100 free. Starting wedge slips in the start for that competitor was obviously affected. This could happen at VMAC. Has happened at VMAC. I think Kelly was starting and I was on the other side. Yeah. So, it says the referee should allow a re-swim of the heat because this was in the consolation final. And of course, you got to give them adequate rest before you can do that. But that's probably the most fair way to deal with it. If, in fact, this occurred during the qualifying rounds, you wouldn't necessarily have to redo the whole heat. You could just incorporate, take care of that one swimmer, but they should be definitely allowed to get a re-swim because it wasn't a fair start for them.
If you see the wind,
What's that?
I have a gym voice.
Grace is getting her steps in, so it's good.
If you see, as an official, you see the wedge moving, and you know that the swimmer has not had a good start, can you stop the whole race? Instead of having it go through. Stop the whole race, give it a rest.
Yeah, if you see a problem before you start,
Well, after you start. It'll be after you start.
after the start,
Because if the wedge moves, you gotta start.
well, I would stop that heat if you see it flew off and that poor swimmer is now 4 seconds behind the field. I'd stop the heat. It'll probably take you the whole 100 before you can stop them, but you know. All right. So we're done with the, okay, I'm good on time. We're done with the new stuff and the change stuff and interpretation. Now we get into all the bonus topics. They're bonus because they happen all the time. And so it's something that Jim Fernald started a while ago is let's go through those things. And so here you go. Conduct, participant, spectator conduct. Last year was a point of emphasis. My grade on last year was amazing. You guys did a wonderful job, and I know you're a big part of the good conduct that we have. We had very few problems that I'm aware of for the whole season, so we appreciate that. And just as a refresher, we have both unsporting and unacceptable conduct that we look at, and the penalties are different for the unsporting conduct, and these haven't changed. So I won't go through them again, unless you want me to. I thought no. Uniforms, Rule 322, we talked about this some already, but this defines for us a good outline of the fact that we want a one-piece suit. We want, for males, what they're supposed to cover, what they're not supposed to cover, as well as females, what should cover, what not cover. And if there's so there's really no change to this at all this year. It's unchanged. Last year we implemented, we're not making a determination if it's decent or indecent anymore. It's just, does it cover or not what it's supposed to cover or not?
We've had boys swimming as girls, so that hasn't been a problem because they wear a girl's suit, so it covers their buttocks and it covers their chest. If we have a girl wanting to compete in the boys, we have to require them to be bare above the waist, or we allow them to wear a girl's suit if they've got stuff sticking out above the waist.
I would expect an accommodation letter from CHSSA to allow that situation.
Hold on. Okay, I'm going to get Beth because she's here.
I actually had that last year, and they will do an accommodation letter. Yes.
CHSSA is really good about helping us, clean up things and make sure that we have the information that we need to do our jobs.
I do remember once upon a time when Adam City did not have a girls team, and they had girls who didn't want to swim, and we did combine the two of them, and the girls wore girl suits, and the boys had the boy suits, and they just did this in the normal deal. So I don't know how that looks now, but yeah, it did happen a number of years ago when they only had a couple girls and a couple boys who wanted to swim, and they did not have any girls team that year.
Well, this had to be a few years ago when the boys' season and girls' season were the same time. It wasn't? Okay. Well, I would be looking for an accommodation. I really would. Uniforms, if worn, suits and caps. So this criteria hasn't changed this year. So still get the one logo, you get size requirements on the logo, you got size requirement if there's a American flag. I brought this up because we have a new thing this year where we want to put a UPC code, QR code on the cap. Well, that's not okay. The list of things that you can have on a cap are shown here. But in my world, if somebody really wanted to do that, maybe that's a link to a cancer awareness thing or something. They need to go through CHSSA and get a accommodation letter for it. So that would be the only way I could say this would be allowed.
Not to bring up a sore subject, but competitor's name. What should the competitor's name be? Can it be, Bubbles, Miller, or does it, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we made a bigger point of that last season, but that got cleaned up really well, so I appreciate that. But yeah, nicknames, believe it or not, my name is William. But my nickname is Bill. We could do that, but I can't be Snoop Dogg. That's my other one. So, we're not looking at birth certificates, but we'd like it to be their given name or something close to that.
And Bill, I just have one comment on that. We had some schools last year that they were wearing their friends' caps, and as an official's perspective and a coach's perspective, this is my issue, is I can't check my beat sheet on everybody in that lane, but I can tell you, if I glance up and see Smith, and I look down and it says, Miller, I'm going to call that cap. That's where the confusion comes for officials. So coaches, I know you may think that's kind of a silly thing, but it's very confusing when everything's moving so fast and you're really concentrating and you look at the heat sheet and then you see a different name. So that's our ask of you guys, and that's when we're going to call it. Hold on.
Is there any consideration given to the kid that cap breaks and his teammate throws them his cap so he can swim?
Sure. Wear it inside out.
Wear it inside out.
Please.
So I'm seeing that note on the bottom of state league qualifier. Is that in addition to the school name or the school logo that would be approved?
Yeah, state qualifier or league qualifier is okay. Okay. Ooh, pictures. Have you ever seen cap like the upper left? We did too. They're all illegal. The size on the arena is way too big.
Hold on.
Okay, the size of the word arena is within the 2.25. It's the arena design below that stretches out to 4 inches, and when you put both of those together, it's totally illegal. And that was that, and it's even if you didn't consider that little line below the arena as part of the arena logo, it is. And that was determined by National Federation. You probably also saw in the Olympics, some of the teams didn't have arena, some of the countries didn't have the word arena, but they had the design. That tells me it's an arena cap as part of their logo.
And there's versions of this, different designs that go along with it. Sandy seriously did send us a note to confirm that none of them are okay. Okay, how about the USA with the flag? How about that? Too big. No. Okay. How about the...
Just one quick, speaking of too big, newer officials, as it says it in the book, but all this stuff is measured off clock. That's a good piece of point.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. How about the suit in the middle? USA. Arena. Arena logo is way too big. I'm not measuring it off the suit, but I've seen enough of these to know that one's going to measure out to put it in our presentation. The other thing is the USA edition would not be okay. So we got two logos going on.
The other thing we've seen is that suit right there could be a two-piece suit. Really watch for that. That's coming out where they have in a tech suit, but it's actually a two-piece suit, and that's illegal. Yeah, they look a lot like this one, but they're actually two pieces. So beware. We caught it. What's that? Yeah, that's a two-piece. See? Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, the one on the right is the classic example of a two-piece suit, which was also ruled on by a federation. This one's an easy call. Both of those can be black. Those are hard calls, but those are not legal suits. So it might be called it's the Power Skin Duo Tech Suits, the one I threw in there. There's versions of this too.
With the monochrome ones that are two-piece, and Monica probably, does it look like you see a waist, or how the monochrome suits that are really a two-piece? What's the easiest way to tell it's a two-piece? You just looking really close. Okay, Arena is the only one that has a two-piece suit. And the only people that we have seen, the only girls we've seen come in with this are, last year it was freshmen. And it's because that suit is legal for 12 and unders on the USA on the club scene, okay? The kids that were already in high school knew that that suit was illegal or they didn't want it. So it's the new kids coming in where we're seeing. So your younger kids are going to be the ones with that suit on. Most of the time they are two different colors, but I have seen black on black and virtually no way to figure that one out.
One thing I would add to that, to answer your question, if they would just put their finger on the outside suit and pull it out. Easy to.
I was going to say, you see it out there because they'll be adjusting the seams. They'll be adjusting the suit for the swim, and that's it. Adjust the suit.
Yeah, good point.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, should we just make the call like we're doing with the watches and after the race find out whether it's 2 pieces or not? So we see him swimming with that, raise the hand.
Sure, depends when you see it. If you see it before the race, you take care of it then. Once the race has started, you'll take care of it after. Oh, crossover turn. You all are probably more knowledgeable than I, but I just wanted you to know exactly how we're judging you. And so you'll notice for backstroke races, or individual medley races, sorry, we're behind the blocks because that's the best place to determine whether you are past vertical towards your back or at least vertical but not past towards your breast. So had personal experience with somebody forgetting to touch and pulling down as well as being over. But it's real easy to see when you're doing it from the back behind the blocks to make that call, especially for Alex in the Olympics. It was not a hard call. So.
And what I did on that is I've seen high school kids, they realize they're going the wrong way and then they come back the other way, it's still illegal. Once they pass that under the stomach, it's illegal.
The last part of this, the breaststroke push-off, we're looking at as the feet leave, where are the shoulders, and are we past vertical towards our back? That would be an arm up. If we're not, then we're okay. More questions? Taping protocol, not changed.
Hold on, no. Just back to the crossover turn, because we've had a lot of issues with this. It's based solely on shoulder and not on hand or feet position.
It's hand and feet to the extent of when I'm touching, where are my shoulders?
Okay, because I had an athlete where just their head was turned, but their shoulder was fine, but it got DQ'd anyways because it looks like they're over because their head. And I try to instruct my athletes to keep their head where it looks good, but it's hard to do in the process.
We're trained to watch shoulders, and we'll talk about that more in our session as well, just to make sure we're all synced in on the best way to judge it. There's a lot of great YouTube videos on this that last season we sent it around, and we'll probably send it around again just before season to let people see this in slow motion and learn how to judge it correctly. Sorry about that DQ though. Taping protocol, same this year. Same list of approved healthcare professionals. All that's working really well, I think. In the bulletin that's coming out, there's a exception, and that's basically if the referee sees a medical device taped on that's clearly going to be used for a disability, then they have the ability, if they're comfortable, to call that a okay modification for this meet. And so that gives the coach a week to get the proper accommodation letter from CHSSA. Okay. So, but it's not an immediate disqualification on those if the referee is, and we've all seen a million of them. And so we're probably the world's experts on things for diabetes pumps and monitors and everything else at this point. So I would hope that a referee would allow for that in that particular case. So I think it's a good thing that went into our. And so you'll probably talk about it when you go through your presentation with the coaches. No change there. So I did highlight that all accommodation must be approved by the state association in writing, and that's really what we go by. It's really helpful because it tells us what's the accommodation that we're allowed to provide. So we're not making it up as we go. It's not Bill's accommodation, it's the one that's been agreed upon, and they do a good job of making sure that the accommodations are clear and what's allowed.
So our school district is starting to do a lot more unified, and unified swimming is at the same time as swimming so that we can compete with everybody. Does every kid for that unified swimming need an accommodation letter?
The unified events, we don't judge them at all. If you have somebody that's going to be swimming in the normal races, then absolutely get an accommodation from CHSSA.
My question is one. So if you have some unified swimmers, can they swim during the JV heat? Or do we need a third heat for the unified? Which could it just be one or two people or a relay? So how do we want to do it? Do a JV or a separate heat?
I've got no experience other than the fact that we're running the unified separately, which I think is a good practice. It's worth the extra time to do so.
So our school almost always has special needs kids on our team. And last year I was a new coach, and I had specifically asked about accommodations because I didn't know if I needed them before dual meets, because they swam in our dual meets and they told me that we were okay as long as our officials just, approved the starting position and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm just clarifying, that at the beginning of the season, I don't need to get approval for my athletes for dual meets because we don't run JV. And so, or do I need to reach out to CHSSA and have written for each one of my athletes before the season starts?
I would highly recommend you do that, get accommodation letters for those people, and I'm not sure what their disabilities are and whether or not they're the same for everybody, but I think CHSSA would be happy to.
If your kids are swimming in the regular heats, if your kids are swimming in the regular heats, and let's just say you have a child that has one arm longer than the other, and they can't touch simultaneous, that needs an accommodation letter, okay? But if it's, if they're, use your common sense, and if they're swimming in maybe the varsity heat of the 100 breaststroke, you have to have that letter, okay? Which allows the official to say, okay, they do not have to have simultaneous hand touch, okay?
Does that clear everything up? I have had situations where coaches that a swimmer can't get out of the water without using the ladder. They put them in lane 1 or 6, but I don't believe that needs a letter. Is that right, Bill?
I agree with that. And even if they put them in lane 4 and we got to wait a minute.
Here we go.
I don't know how anyone gets out of EMAC, so.
Yeah, it's like if you've got a swimmer at a dual meet, sure, I can put the full plane, but you go to an invite and all of a sudden my kid is seated and he's in lane 5, he needs the ladder. That's not it.
I think if you let the referee know, we're in it for the benefit of the swimmers, and so I believe as officials we're going to use our common sense.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Okay. Reminders. So, exhibition. There's always questions every year, so we try to head them off and get you the info you need. So, it is your privilege to decide if you want to make a swimmer or diver exhibition. It's not required that you do so, but if you choose to do that, there you go. Exhibition does count as an individual entry. So against the 4 total, and no more than 2 individual events. Counts against that. Doesn't count as a team entry if it's in JV. It does count as a team entry in varsity. So it's all spelled out perfectly in the bulletin. But I thought I'd touch on it and just remind you it's in there and it makes sense because this is slightly different than the book. Okay? So exhibition swimmers can be disqualified. They can also qualify for a higher level meet, state, whatever, and they do not score any points. Make sense? Okay, how about seeding and scoring? Okay, so all meets must be scored except the League B and League JV. All other meets, we need a score. Okay? Invite seeding is not allowed at a varsity dual meet. Okay? We follow the odds and evens protocol and deal with the fact that if you have 5 lanes, we've got to set aside a lane or do something to make it fair. Okay? Invite seating is permitted in JV. I haven't seen that done, but it might be a little confusing, but it is certainly something you could do. We won't yell at you, promise. And an alternative to the JV varsity format is doing a 2-heat varsity. You could do that as well. Cool. NFHS Learn. This is my favorite place to go to refresh on things. I always put this in. I added the new judging springboard diving video. I personally think it's very terrific. It's kind of a change for how I was originally programmed my mind. Former Bill would say, okay, every dive is going to be a 7, but I'm going to move up when it's appropriate or move down when it's appropriate. This video really prescribes to know your different categories of what is unsatisfactory, what's deficient, what's satisfactory, so on. And so when you see the dive, you should be able to place it in a category. And if you have that level of rubric knowledge and you use it, I think I found it to be very helpful. Now, if you watch that video, I recommend anyone who would like to watch it, it's a good. Be aware, there was a couple of things that I think the dive instructor didn't understand some of our rule codes. And so there was one time they were like, well, you know, there was a minor break there, but I wouldn't call that. Or I wouldn't change the category for that. It's like, well, no, there's a minor break. We're gonna classify that no more than 4.5. So anyway, I like it. Hope you'll enjoy it if you get to watch it. All right. Thank you. And last questions? Any more? Anything for you.
Okay, and before you go, I just have a couple tidbits as my experience and as president. Oh wait, something. Are you okay? Okay, just real quick. Referees. Our referees are emerged seasoned officials, so knowing that we want new officials on deck, I'm asking referees. When you arrive at the pool, really scan that pool. Make sure that 15-meter mark is marked before the meet starts. That's very important. Talk to your table. Make sure before that meet starts that the scoring is appropriate and the right scoring, because they have imported things at times, and I have noticed sometimes that that's not correct. That will help you getting out of that meet much quicker if it's not having to get fixed afterwards. The other thing we started a few years back, and I think it's kind of fallen by the wayside, and I would really like the referees to gather your crew after the meet for just 5 minutes and have some feedback and what we can do better, what worked. That's very important to me that you all do that. And during the meet, as a referee, if you can scan where your officials are, some of our new officials tend to forget. I know I always forgot. I'd be at that 15-meter mark, then came the breaststroke. Do we need to be at the 15-meter mark? No, we don't. And just to coach them along the way, I think will help retain our officials and give them a good experience. My goal in this whole organization is that when you have a swim meet, it's something you want to do, and you get there and you have these officials that you enjoy being around. We've had a few experiences where that's not the case. I never want to see that, and I always want to know about that, okay? And then the other thing, and now this is not a test, but I am just curious. Even seasoned officials, who knows what an exceptions report is? Be honest, and you're not in trouble. Okay. Exceptions reports are very important. And I want to thank Monica for teaching me this, because it was a long time I was officiating, and she's like, make sure you have an exceptions report. And I'm to the point where I'm like, well, I don't know, what is she talking about? An exceptions report is run from your table. What is this going to do is it's going to let you know if any athlete is in too many events at any time. That is very important. They should come back to you. You should ask for it at the beginning of the meet, and typically before the 400 free relay at the end. That report should show nothing. Your table might look confused and say, there's no report. And you're like, great, that is perfect. I ran across this at another meet where we had a new official swimming, a very little team swimming a very big team, and all of a sudden I noticed this gal, and I'm like, I don't notice names a lot, but her name was there a lot. And then it was perfect, because at that point I talked to my table about an exceptions report, and a man showed up behind me, which honestly I thought was a parent complaining. So I'm like, what do you need? And he's like, I have a question for you. And I said, what? He goes, I ran this report and there's this name on it. And I said, perfect. I noticed the name, let's fix it now. So that's huge, and I want everybody to, if you need to know where the exceptions, and coaches, talk to your table, let them know that we may be asking for this report, and kind of get them trained up on how to run those reports. It's very important. Then just my little tidbit on diving. As some of you know, before a dive card gets accepted for state, I review it. Monica did it before me, and there are days on Sundays, and I'm not complaining, that I spend hours doing this because it's important. But when I see a referee sign a dive card that has no tabulation on a score, it's not getting accepted. And all that's going to do is send it back to the coach, try and get it fixed, and it's a big mess, trust me. I believe in our rule book that we do review what, that the scores tabulations are correct, and we, especially on state quals, re-add it, take the time. I would really appreciate it. That's just my favor to you guys, but absolutely no scores I'm not going to accept.
We make some example sheets of what finished dive card should look like. Maybe get rid of all those.
Yeah, I can. Okay, I'll work with Bill, and maybe when we send some stuff out, I'll send you some examples of what we'd like to see and what we wouldn't like to see.
I'm circling back a little bit to the reports. I don't know if it's possible, but could there be, for anyone that's interested, on the referee side especially, or anyone, just a little tutorial on how to score and how to run those reports, those different things, because I've run into situations not infrequently where at the end of the meet, whoever's running the table does not know how to run the correct reports. I don't know the program itself.
Well, we
we just had the most marvelous Monica volunteer to do that for us. Ron, okay. You have a question? Are you gonna? Yeah, it would be very helpful if we just had like something we could keep in our bag that says, because we've had tables that are new, and I totally appreciate these people doing this. But I too am like, I could be in a pickle because I don't know exactly how to get those reports. And if it's just that basic report to get that meet scored and the total so we can go home, that would be marvelous. So thank you, Ron. Thank you, Monica. That's all I have. So thanks, you guys. Oh, wait, one more, Ed. Pass it behind you. Thank you.
I almost hate to ask, but is a four-letter expletive from a diver or a diver or a swimmer at the conclusion of the event? You know, okay, I just missed the state qualification by 1/1,000,000 of a second, and you hear that swimmer use the four-letter expletive. Is that unacceptable conduct? Use of profanity?
Yep. It's the second bullet.
Okay.
All right. Who needs a break?
All right. I need a break. Thank you, everybody.
All right. We're going to have a break. We'll get started at 9.